So good afternoon, Patterson. And yes, I do miss live music. So when they told me I was going to be able to stream to 3,000 people, I was very excited. And if you can hear me, it's because I'm right down the road in Princeton, New Jersey, where Learning Ally is based. So my name is Dawn, and I am the Director of Professional Learning Services here at Learning Ally. And as a former high school English teacher, I am very excited today to work with you on kicking off Learning Ally here in Patterson. I get to be able to be the one to help you with getting a key to a virtual book room of over 80,000 human-read audiobooks with unlimited copies and no checkout dates to be able to use with your students to get them reading. I am joined today by some amazing colleagues that I first want to just introduce you to. First up is Krista Lippert. Krista is going to be your Senior Implementation Success Manager, and her goal is really to help you with getting your students reading and to support your district in that endeavor. She's a former elementary school teacher, 1st through 4th grade here in Jersey, and we are really excited today to really get your students reading with Learning Ally. And another part of your Learning Ally team is Gina Emden. And Gina is also a former elementary school teacher and a reading specialist who has really been the one to help your district bring Learning Ally back. We are also joined today by Dr. Terry Noland, who is our Vice President of Educator Initiatives, who wanted to welcome you to the Learning Ally family. Dr. Terry?
Thanks, Dawn. Dr. Marianne Wolf says that books allow you to act like a heroine and think like a knight. Those words ring so true about books and what they allow a student to do and escape into. But the problem is, for a struggling reader, those books sometimes are not accessible. Access to books. I want you to imagine that you walk up to a library or a bookstore and you walk inside and you know that you want to go grab a book, but the librarian quickly runs over, grabs you by the arm and takes you away to this teeny tiny little corner and says, "Oh no, for you, you got to pick from what's over here." All of these leveled books, there's not much to look at, but you look up and you see all of these people standing around. You see a Michael Burgess standing there, and he's holding a book, the Kwame Alexander book, Booked and Rebound. You see Grant Patrizio standing there, and he's got the Dog Man books, and all your friends are reading the Dog Man books. That's what Learning Ally does. Learning Ally brings people. We just added to your staff with our 1,000 volunteer human readers bringing and narrating these books and bringing them to life. As Dawn said, we just gave you access to the library. So I'm so honored to be able to welcome you all here and say, this is a partnership. We are here for you. You've got an amazing team. And Dawn, I'm handing you the keys to open up that library.
Thank you so much, Dr. Terry. Now you may be thinking, wow, what's in this book room for me? I'm a science, social studies, math, health teacher. Well, we may have your textbooks. We may also have a lot of great books that will be on the topics that you want your students to explore and learn more about. Think about project-based learning that you might want to do. If you are a music or an art teacher, we may have biographies on all of the famous artists that you want to introduce to your students, maybe even the genres or time periods that you want them to explore. If you're a world language teacher, which I met through email last night, we have a lot of great books. We're going to put it in our Google Sheet question, a link to all of the great books in world languages that could really help your students with the fluency, the pronunciation. Now, my English language arts friends, think of this as your shared book, as your independent reading go-to. We are going to provide your students with equitable access to all the books that they need to and want to read. And we are going to help all of your students here in Patterson really get that practice of being a reader and learn how to be even more engaged and independent learners. So we are so excited to be with you today, to be able to get you into that book room, as well as really helping your students get reading before spring break. So some of the logistics, the housekeeping. First of all, welcome to my kitchen. I hope all of you brought your own snack. Second, the objectives for today's training. We are going to build together your dashboard of your students. We have already uploaded all of the students that you work with so that you would be able to put them in your view to be able to assign books as well as to monitor the reading that they're doing. We're also going to be looking at how you can use this in your classroom virtually now, as well as when you are back in person. How would this look? We're also going to be looking at this from a standpoint of how you could introduce Learning Ally and all these amazing books to your students, as well as to their families. Now, an email went out from the district yesterday that had 3 sort of resources for you. So I'd like you to, if you haven't already, kind of access them, as these will be the ways that we can interact today, as well as to be able to answer any questions that you have now, as well as later. So the 3 things that were in that email, one is a guided notes document. And this is really just following the same flow as our agenda today to help you with a leave behind, if you will. All of the things that I am going to reference in today's training are going to be in this guided notes document. It's also a place where you could take notes should you want. So we are first going to really kind of spend some time with thinking about why audiobooks can help your students. And then we're going to get you into the teacher portal so that you can build that dashboard and assign your first book. And then we are going to look at how students will access the app to get reading. Now, the other resource that we placed in that email was a link to a questions document. And this is where, through this streaming, we are going to be able to get your questions answered. So if you wouldn't mind, if you have any questions throughout today's training, just go ahead to that Google Sheet, put your name, your school, your email, and your question. And we're going to try and answer them in real time today. And if it's something that we need to do a little bit more research or a little bit more of a fix, we will be able to email you if you provide us that information. Now, the last piece that was included in that email were just a look to your own email for a login credentials. So what we were able to do was upload staff members using your PPS staff email into our system. So when we go to log in later, you are going to use your PPS staff email, and you were emailed a password by us. So that will allow you to go ahead and access your own teacher dashboard later on in this session. So those are the guided notes, the questions, and your login credentials that were in that email yesterday that you can use while you're on the call today. Now, first, we want to spend a little bit of time of thinking about why audiobooks will help your students. And you heard Dr. Nolan talk about Kwame Alexander as one of those great authors that you may want to introduce to your students. Now, I've worked with Kwame when he was a professional developer looking at helping teachers learn how to do creative writing lessons with his students. And now, if you saw over the weekend on the news, his crossover series, which starts with the book Rebound, has just been opted by Disney Plus to become a TV series. Now, that is amazing in and of itself, but if you are teaching 5th through 7th grade, you might want to take a look at his website and his Facebook, because he's doing a worldwide casting search for children, teenagers, to star in his TV series. So he really wants to get some of those students that he taught almost to be able to be involved in his current project. So it's a great book, and it's a great one that would really get your students intrigued in reading. It's about basketball, it's about kids their age, and it's really written in poetry, actual poetry. So, if you think about a struggling reader in your class, this might seem like a good book that you might want to recommend. But let's think about, what do your students struggle with text? You have a struggling reader in your mind. What do they struggle with in terms of text? It might be the vocabulary. It might be the background knowledge to truly comprehend what they're reading. They might be doing more word by word decoding and not able to really have the fluency to comprehend that bigger picture. It might be just how the words are on the page. They may need larger font or more of a contrast or more line spacing, that the text itself may seem a little difficult. Now, we really are looking at this kind of more big picture and just with this one specific example on our screen, but just thinking about what they would struggle with. Now, let's imagine that to this text on your screen, we added the voice of a great storyteller. So as you listen to a little clip of Rebound, I'd love for you to think about how this might help your students just to have a good storyteller.
May 28th, 1988. The game is on at the park. The stars are out. It's close to dark. Poop kings soaring in the sky. So high, so fly, like they got wings. It's like the blacktop is a box spring. Hey, Charlie, you see what he did with that thing? My best friend Skinny yells, twirling and whirling the ball so sweet, it's like a bee sting. Ouch. He just swished in your face, stung you like a can of mace. These boys so fly, they're out of space.
So just by having a great storyteller, students would be able to have the pronunciation, be able to hear the words and see the words. They're really, as one of my students put it, they're not just being read to, they're being drawn into the story. That yes, it happened in 1988, but I can feel that this is this amazing basketball game that's happening all around me. You know, a lot of students for poetry is very difficult because it's less words, but more meaning packed into those words. So just being able to hear it can kind of help me see or the meter and the rhythm of it that can also help me with that comprehension. Now let's think of that same struggling reader with that great voice of a storyteller now having the ability to really see those words and hear the words and be able to interact with the text. So let me show you what that looks like. As students enter into their books, they're going to be able to adjust the settings. There's a little icon in the lower right-hand side of their screen, and they are going to be able to control the volume, the speed at which it is read to them. They're going to be able to turn off things like image descriptions or even the playback if they want to read it themselves. They're going to be able to make the font bigger, increase the spacing, and even be able to use this for you on your Zoom or in your classroom with a way to project, that this now can become a big book that you can manipulate. We can even make it my favorite Yankee color blue if I wanted to be able to get my students really energized about reading. Now, all of those settings really should help me with my comprehension and my motivation. So let's hear that great storyteller now.
May 28th, 1988. The game is on at the park. The stars are out. It's close to dark. Poop kings soaring in the sky. So high, so fly, like they got wings. It's like the blacktop is a box.
So included within that great storyteller and being able to see the words highlighted on the screen as I'm listening, I have every word clickable to be a dictionary. So I didn't quite understand how a blacktop could be a box spring because those seem to be two different things in my head. And so I can learn what is the blacktop, how are they using it, and make a note about that vocabulary.
You see what he did with that thing? My best friend Skinny yells, twirling and whirling the ball so sweet, it's like a bee sting. Ouch. He just swished in your face, stung you like a can of mace. These boys so fly, they're out of space. Come on, Charlie, I got next. Let's hoop, Skinny says, jumping up from the sidewalk. Nah, I gotta get home for dinner. I lie.
So imagine being able to do all of the activities that you are asking your students to do, the stop and jots, the reading post-its, maybe that you have them add to any book, the note-taking, the journaling. Imagine being able to do that right in the text. By clicking on a little bookmark icon, your students are going to be able to do those great practicing of reading strategy,
I used to play horse against.
all within the app. And how easy is it to then select those stop and jots that you may have as your assignment and email them to you as their teacher, or to download them and maybe put them in the Google Drive that you ask them to add their journals to. All of this can be done within the Learning Ally app. So just take a minute and think about all of our 80,000 human read audiobooks have a storyteller, have that first voice that's going to be able to help your students get into their textbooks, their pleasure books, the things they need to and want to read. But also the ability to see the words and hear the words at the same time and truly interact with the text through the dictionary and the annotations. Now, in your guided notes document, you have an ability to just kind of summarize your thoughts right now. How will Learning Ally, what you know it to be, just even with this little bit of a glimpse, how will it assist your struggling readers? Jot down some of your thoughts. Krista, I'm going to use this opportunity to see if we have anything coming in as questions right now.
We do. We have a few questions that seem to be the same question. One of them is that we have a handful of teachers who are assigned to the incorrect school. If they give us the proper school, we will make sure that gets done, if not now, but shortly after. The second thing is, Dawn, that we're getting a lot of questions around Spanish titles.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to let everybody know that we do have a list of books that are in Spanish, and we will distribute that to you in the coming days.
And you can also put it maybe right in the Google Sheet if we
I can.
Yeah, so that all of our world language friends can have that. Great. Thank you so much. And we will be logging in actually to the Ed portal now so that you will be able to kind of see what the teacher side looks like. So if you are having any kind of trouble with logging in, we will be able to show you on screen. And then we can always follow up with you if you put it on that Google Sheet, any problems that you may be having. So we can go ahead and get those remedied for you. So now that we've seen what Learning Ally, the audiobook, is and why it might really help your students with their comprehension, with their fluency, their decoding, and really just making text come alive and not see it anymore as an obstacle, we're going to look at the two components of Learning Ally, the audiobook app where students will do their reading, and the educator portal where you will be able to go and monitor that reading as well as assign that reading. So we're going to go ahead and go into the Ed portal first, and then we'll spend some time in the audiobook app so you can get to practice and explore it just like we have just seen. So we'll be able to spend some more time in that. Now let's go ahead and log in to the Learning Ally Educator portal. And again, if you run into any problems, please know that you can just kind of sit back and watch, and I will show you what you will need to do. And then we will make sure that we get you your login credentials as soon as possible. But if you are able to open up another tab and be able to have the learningally.org website open, that will just help you with being able to kind of master these simple little steps that we're going to ask you to do firsthand. Now, when you get to learningally.org, you're going to click on the login button in the upper right-hand corner. Then you're going to be asked to supply your username. Now, your username is actually your PPS staff version of your email. So if you're trying to use the K-12 Patterson, we will really, for the most part, have you, if you are a teacher, your account will be PPS staff. So go ahead and use that username. Now, a password would have been emailed to you automatically through our system on St. Patrick's Day, but it may have gone to spam. It may have, for some reason, just sort of not gotten to where it needed to go. So we would just ask you, if you need to, you can go ahead and click on Forgot Password, having your PPS email as your username, and it will allow you to reset. Now, because there's a lot of us trying to do that all at once, it may take a little bit of time. So again, you can just kind of sit back and watch, and then we'll be able to make sure that you're able to log in a little bit. I'm just going to go ahead and log in. Now, if this is the first time that you're logging in, you will first be asked to confirm your profile. Now, your profile is your school, so that's where you'll know if you're assigned to the right school or not, to Krista's point. So you can put on our Google Sheet where you might be now, so we can go ahead and move you over and make sure you're in the right school. And you will then be met by a needs analysis survey. That you can just go ahead and click skip. You can always come back to it so you can get some great resources that are kind of designed for you. But at this point, we'll just go ahead and get to your dashboard. So on my screen is what you will see when you go through the login and confirm your profile. You also get to set your password to whatever you would like it to be. That way you'll be able to remember it. Now, I'm going to model some things now for you, things like how to create your dashboard, how to browse and assign books, and even monitor some of the data. So again, if you'd like to sort of sit back and watch right now, that's fine, because I'm going to give you some work time after this so that you can go ahead and create your dashboard. So here we are on my dashboard, and you'll notice that I have already added students to my dashboard. So I am able to see from my first login screen who's reading, how many pages they're reading, how many minutes they're reading for me. So once you build your dashboard, it's going to be very easy for you to monitor your students' reading, as well as to assign them books. So especially for some of our younger students, our pre-K through 2, you're thinking of maybe your big books in your classroom that you might want to assign students. 3 through 5, you might want to do that as well. As students get older, this could be something that really is done by them. They can find their own books, but really this would be a way for you to be able to monitor and see what they're reading regardless of their age group. Now, how do you build your dashboard? Well, go ahead and select the phrase Manage Students. This is going to take you to a page, and this is where if you are technically in the wrong school at the moment, you won't be able to find your students. But we want to just sort of show you how you can create your own dashboard, your own group of students. So on the Manage Student page, you're going to be able to filter by grade level and be able to see your students. So let's say I work with a 3rd grade class. When I filter by that grade, all of the students that are in 3rd grade in this school that I'm assigned to will show up in the search. Now I can also search for individual students by their first name, their last name, and be able to add them to my students. So here in this school, Smithtown Elementary School, you'll see when I filtered by 3rd grade, here are all my 3rd graders. And all I want to do is go ahead and add a student, the plus my student button, to be able to place them on my dashboard. If you incorrectly select a student, just click on minus my student. But this is really just putting them on your dashboard so that you're more easily able to monitor their usage, as well as to assign them books. All I do is click on plus my students, and I'm able to add Molly McBride to my class. Now, once you have your dashboard created, it's much easier to then browse and assign books to your group of students. So now that I've built, say, my dashboard, I can go to Browse Audiobooks. And this is going to connect you to that over 80,000 human-read audiobook library. And this is where you can search by title, by author, by ISBN number, if you are looking for a very specific textbook. You're also able to look for things by category. So my social studies friends, you could look by primary sources and see if some of the speeches that you might be using in your history classes are in our database. So you can search by just using the search audiobook, or you can go into things like categories and curriculum. A great place to start if you wanted to help your students find a really good book is by simply clicking on Goodreads. These are all the best of the best that we have for your students. So it's really sort of tease them up to have a great storyteller as their first experience with Learning Ally. If you go to curriculum, you could see that primary source document if you're a social studies teacher and be able to find things that are maybe more aligned by standard in your content area. Now, I just want to show you Rebound, because that's the book that I picked for my demonstration. I click in Rebound and I'm taken to a listing of all the books that have Rebound in their titles or in their kind of descriptions. And when I find a good book that I want to add to my students, I can always take a look at a preview of maybe the audio or the video. I can click into the book to learn the Lexile level, the grade level, but I just simply go ahead and add to bookshelf, and I'm able to assign it to the students that are in my class. Now, you wouldn't have to do this for all of your students, but it just seems to make sense to be able to assign books for those that may struggle with kind of the browsing, right? Our youngest, our pre-K through 2, you might really want to assign some books to them, especially for spring break, where the older students, you might use some of the resources we have that we'll show you later to have them get into the app and actually find their first great book. Now here I have all the students in my students, and I'm simply able to go ahead and select. I can add all of them, and I'm going to be able to assign these books. This is how easy it would be to do literature circles in your class. If you have some great titles by Kwame Alexander, you want to do an author study, you could select different groupings of students. Now, once you've browsed and assigned books for your students, your dashboard is then going to become the place that you would want to see if they are actually reading. And so the minutes will fill in the pages, and you can select the student's name to be able to see exactly what books are on their bookshelf. So let me go into Anthony True. And this is where you could also reset any student's passwords. So it gives you kind of the teacher view of what's on their bookshelf. If you need to remove anything that you're going to be reading as a class later on, you are able to print off all of the reports that you might want to share with families. So you're really able to kind of peer over a student's shoulder to see what they're reading, who figured it out, and put it on their bookshelf, as well as how many pages they've read. Now, on your Getting Started guide, on page 2, there are links to all of the things that I just showed you. So how to assign books, how to monitor reading, as well as the educator portal. Now, what I'd like to do now is give you some time to interact with the portal yourself. Now it is 2 o'clock, so I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for the app where your students are actually going to go to reading. So I'm going to give you 4 minutes on the clock. I've set a timer and allow you to do the to-do list on your screen. So you're going to log in, confirm your profile, go to Manage Students and add students to your dashboard, and then browse for a book and assign it to one of your students. I was waiting for some sort of noise that it makes when the timer goes off. I must have muted it. That's just not fun. I used to use the timers all the time with my ninth graders. If they felt like a sense of urgency, they did work. Now, I wanted to just give you a couple of minutes just so that you could kind of go through and start to add students to your My Student dashboard, be able to find a great book and assign it to one of your students. Now, the app is what we're going to look at next, so you can see what happens when you assign a book to your account as well as to your students. But first, let's talk a little bit about what the goal would be for your students with reading. And so if you think about the consistency of reading that you might want to build in your students, you got to build maybe the routine, the stamina, but basically students who read 20 minutes a day, at least 3 days a week with Learning Ally, they can increase their overall comprehension by about 33%. So if you think about audiobooks, we're helping them to increase their vocabulary. They're getting a great storyteller saying the words as they're able to see the words and even have those words highlighted. So they're really able to also improve their overall background knowledge of a topic because they're just getting comprehensible text as an input into their world. So we really think of this increase, this 30% increase, happening in as little as 11 weeks. So we really call that internally here at Learning Ally the reading with frequency goal. And so it's 20 minutes a day, 3 days a week or more to really get your students into a routine of reading and to get that overall comprehension increase. So on your guided notes document, you have a little bit of a space to take some notes on how you might set this as a goal for your students. And I want you to also think about this is across all the different content areas that students may be able to utilize Learning Ally to read. And this is also something that as you are introducing Learning Ally to your students, really the first person who may meet them tomorrow morning can be that person to introduce them, set this goal, and then everyone else can kind of take advantage of that and really think about wherever your students are reading, they are going to do that reading with Learning Ally. It's almost a substitution, right? You may have struggled to find text for your students given the time, and they may not have had a lot of options in their home. So you may have had to go searching for books with the local libraries closed and those types of things. But if you think about that idea of a substitution, wherever your students are reading now, they can be reading with Learning Ally. So if it's a shared text, like a textbook or a novel in an English language arts class, you can use the Learning Ally books for whole group, small group reading, and even the instruction. Because you can, like I showed you, be able to use your books through Zoom and be able to put them on your smartboard or your projection at the front of the room when you're back together. You can also think about this as a great way for literature clubs, book clubs to come to fruition. As a ninth grade English teacher, I was always nervous because I never had all the copies I wanted of the books my students wanted to read. And of course, no one wanted to be reading the lowest level book in my class. They wanted to read the same book as their friends. And so now with Learning Ally, you have unlimited copies of the titles you may want and your students may want to read, but also they can punch above their weight class because this provides them all the scaffolds they would need to handle more rigorous texts. And so you don't have to necessarily worry about their reading level in their literature circles or book clubs. Now, right now, given the time we are and that we are virtual, independent reading, homework, kind of one and the same, but this could really be a way to get your kids into a great book for their own pleasure. So think of this really as how you can meet the goal of 20 minutes a day for at least 3 days a week through all of these different ways your kids are currently reading. Now let's look at the app. We've talked about them reading. Now, what does it look like when they actually enter in to the app and get reading? So the audiobook app is something that can be downloaded or accessed through the web. Now, we have been working with your IT department to see if we could get the app pushed out. And right now, given the ways in which we are working, all from home, it's not able to be pushed out yet, but it is something that has been approved for your students to download on to the district issued devices and for you to be able to download it on those district issued devices. The nice thing about having the app downloaded is that it does allow students to read offline. So they can, when they do have a consistent or persistent internet connection, be able to download some books and be able to read. And then when they get back into Wi-Fi land, they would be able to then sync that information. Now we have a web app that I'm about to show you as well. So that could be an alternative, but then students would just need to have a persistent internet connection. They won't have to download anything, but they will have to have that persistent internet connection. But I also want you to think about this kind of maybe even more big picture. If your students are comfortable reading on their phone or on another device like a tablet, you can go ahead and have them download the app onto those devices. It's a free app in all app stores. And when your students go to log in, they're going to be using their student email address and their student ID number as their password. So they'll be able to log in either through an app that's downloaded or through that web version, but just think of what would it mean for a family if they could go ahead and just even do this from their phone. Now, what I'm going to do next is kind of log into the app so you can see what it looks like. But I also just want to share with you some of the resources that we have that will help you introduce Learning Ally to your students. In your guided notes document on page 3, you have some great links. You have a link to a YouTube video that is from a student who is a big fan of Learning Ally and shows how a student could navigate the app and add a book. It's about 4 minutes, and so it might be something that you would want to share whole group to get your students the awareness that they all have Learning Ally. If you're teaching more at the secondary level, this could be the way that students really learn how to navigate. Watch this video and find a good book, and then you could look at your dashboard and see if they did. We also have lesson plans that include scavenger hunts, and these could even be assignments that you give to your students so that they learn how to navigate and find a great book to read. You can also just simply model the use and the routine that you want set, things like those bookmarks or the dictionary new words that you want kids to kind of annotate in the app. You could show all of that to them. And for my pre-K through 2 friends, you might also want to think of this as a big book on your Zoom for your entire class. But then also this book can go home with the students, is home with the students, and the families could reread the same book over and over again to really build their fluency and their comprehension, right? You never had enough copies to do that, to send every single student home with the book that you're using that week as your shared text. So we have a lot of great resources that are for family outreach, including a deck that you can use through Google Slides to even do a family night if you wanted to. Now, our goal is to really have you introduce Learning Ally to your students and get them all to pick a great book for spring break. We're all going to have to maybe take more of a virtual staycation and decide where we may want to travel to later. So think about a great book as a way to really engage your students in an adventure over spring break. So I'm going to go ahead and get to the app right now so that you guys can take a look at what that looks like. Now here, I will just show you on your page 3 of your Getting Started guide. Here are all of those links that I just showed in that slide, ready for you to explore and think how you can go about introducing Learning Ally to your students. Now here is the app. It is read.learningally.org. It looks exactly like the downloaded version. And when students enter their usernames and their passwords, it goes ahead and puts them on their bookshelf. Now you have access to this app as well. So if you wanted to, in another tab, you could enter read.learningally.org. Again, it is on your Getting Started guide, and enter in the same teacher credentials that you used to access the Ed portal. Once you are in your teacher account, any book that you have assigned your students will show up on your bookshelf. Now, I've assigned a lot to a lot of students, as you can see, because I have a ton of books on my bookshelf. But let's see, I'd like to add just one more. I'm going to go ahead and find the Add Books button. And this is where all of your students can click and select and find their first great book to read on Learning Ally. Now, I was thinking about how for some of your students, especially the pre-K and the kinder kids, this could be the first time that they're coming to school. So for everybody else, it's coming back to school for the first time. But for our littles, this could be the very first time that they're coming to school. So imagine what you could do maybe from a social and emotional learning perspective to think about some of the great big books that you could use in your classroom to set the tone, have a shared narrative about what it means to be a student in your class. And one of my favorites for doing this, I have a lot of godchildren, so that's why I'm a big picture book fan, even though I was a high school English teacher. Nobody Hugs a Cactus. So I'm going to type in the name of this book. And there it is. Nobody hugs a cactus. If you think about it, nobody really does. But this poor little cactus is sitting on a windowsill overlooking the desert and really kind of likes to be alone and realizes as people come to say hi to him, he's not really excited about all the noise and all the things that they get in. I was just thinking about a kid that may be spending a lot of time alone, now coming into a classroom with a bunch of kids and really kind of not knowing how to take it all in. And that nobody can really hug each other when we come back to school. So we can use this little cactus story maybe as a shared text. Now students find a great book, they can watch a little video preview, they can just go ahead and add to their bookshelf. Now when they go back into the app, they just have to find their little person and update their books. And now that book is waiting for me here on my bookshelf and I can download it. And this is where the internet comes into play, right? If I have a persistent internet connection, I can go ahead and download this book. But let's say I don't always. As soon as I download the book, it's there and waiting for me to be able to read offline if I have installed the app. It's going to look exactly the same, but that's just a little bit of a difference between the web app and the downloadable app is now this downloaded book would be ready for me. As soon as the student selects play, the book.
Nobody hugs a cactus. Hank lived in a pot. The pot sat in a window. The window looked out at the empty desert. It was hot, dry, peaceful, and quiet. Just the way Hank liked it.
So a great book that could become part of your shared narrative, and think of all the great vocabulary words, even in that first little stanza about Hank. And I know Gina's excited because her dog is named Hank. No relation though. Hank probably likes hugs. This Hank doesn't like hugs. Two different things, cactus, dog. But this is a great book to really kind of welcome kids back into the classroom, do a little social and emotional learning, and it is all right there waiting for them on their bookshelf if you go ahead and assign students their books. Now, I wanted to share with you one other way that you might want to introduce Learning Ally to your students, and that is through our reading programs. We do 4 sort of reading programs over the course of the year. We just finished up our Great Reading Games, which is an amazing contest that actually just finished up like last week. So I'm so sorry. Next year, we're going to get you next year into the Great Reading Games. But now is Spring into Reading. Now, I'm a little sad today because my University of Maryland men's basketball team lost last night. However, March Madness is a huge thing in my life. And we have amazing resources on our Spring Into Reading site that are book brackets. So for spring break, if you wanted to assign a book to maybe smaller groups in your class, we have brackets by grade level. And so if I look at K2, for example, these are some great books. There's Nobody Hugs a Cactus that different students can read, and then they can talk about which one they liked better and be able to declare winners, just like the NCAA brackets. So we have a lot of great resources, poetry in your pocket, picture book palooza, all things that can be lots of fun to do from now until spring break to get all of your students reading on Learning Ally. So as we come to a close today, we want to talk a little bit about what some of the next steps are. But first, let's just check in. Krista, do we have any more questions we need to answer, my friend?
We have a few. I believe that you did respond to some. Family outreach has been asked about, and we have that. Remember, in your guided notes, there are some resources that you can share with your families. In addition to that, we are going to be working with the district to put some additional steps in place. And another question that kept coming up was about book searching for kindergarten students. And we don't have a search that goes to kindergarten, but yet we have many books that are for kindergarten. So you can search by title, you can search by series, you can search by author. And remember that those kindergartners can read many books that aren't at their phonetic level, but yet are at their comprehension level when being read to. So you can look for those first and second grade books for those students. And that's it, Dawn.
Great. And check out in the guided notes, like Krista said, the family night materials, because we do have a short little video. It's less than 5 minutes in both English and Spanish that will tell parents what we are, what we do, and how they can access a great book for their students. There's a user guide that's in English and Spanish that can help kind of walk through and do some troubleshooting. So take advantage of those family night materials. And we were going to be working with the district in order to kind of put some of those up on the parent portal. So if there's something that you like, feel free to let us know, and we can make sure that that's included in those family resources. Great. I'm so glad this is working, that we actually get to hear your questions and be able to answer. If it's anything that we haven't been able to, just go ahead and put it on the Google Sheet and we will make sure that we follow up with you if it's any kind of thing that we might need to research or fix. So thinking about next steps, the goal is to get every student a great book and reading by spring break. So what do we need to do in order to meet that goal? Well, you might want to finish your My Student Dashboard. 4 minutes may not have been enough. For some, it probably felt like eternity, like me. However, you want to go in and just make sure that your dashboard has all of your students. It just makes it easier for you to monitor and assign. The second piece would be really to think through, where do your students read now, and how can you establish the routine of using Learning Ally? It's kind of that substitution, right? You may have gone here, now you can go here and use Learning Ally. And get your students the stamina as well as the kind of practice, if you will, of reading, so we can get to that reading with frequency goal. 20 minutes a day, 3 days a week. Yes, for our littles, it's going to take, some time and build some stamina, and they may do it in smaller chunks, but we really want to be able to put your students on a pathway to that improved comprehension. And the last thing to do is really to think about how you're going to introduce it to your students and families, especially given that spring break is the end of next week. if I remember correctly. Maybe the week after, I forget. I know, it's like April 2nd, I think, right? Is your spring break. So we want to get everybody reading and have a great book before they go on spring break. One thing that you might want to do is huddle as a grade level or a school, because really all of your students have access to Learning Ally. It is their email address and their student ID number to enter the app or to enter the web app to be able to access the books and read. So who gets them first tomorrow could be the one to introduce Learning Ally to them and really share how they would log in and how they will navigate. Everyone else can then just take advantage of that. So thinking of my secondary friends where you might have different periods or different teachers, kind of talk amongst yourselves to really think about, we only have to do it once. And then all students will kind of know, and we can be able to reinforce it for our content areas. For the littles, it might be more in our pre-K through 2, really using it more as a whole group book that you're then able to task, if you will, for families to be able to reread for that fluency and comprehension support. Now, this is not the only time that we get to hang out together. Maybe not in my kitchen, I'm not sure. Maybe we will all be together in Patterson one day, very soon. But we want to sort of give you a little bit of a preview of what some of the follow-up support that we will be providing in the district. So Krista, do you want to tell them what we're planning to do next?
Yes. So what we are going to be supplying you with are the names of a couple building leaders per building. And these building leaders are going to act as like the go-to people for Learning Ally. We are going to be having follow-up sessions so that they can become more familiar with Learning Ally. You will relay your questions to the building leaders, and if they cannot answer them, they will come to me. So we're just going to be having follow-up sessions with building leaders and maybe some other additional staff, getting everybody to get to know Learning Ally even more. And they will be your line of communication to me to get your answers answered for you. So I really look forward to working in the Patterson district and keeping you engaged throughout. So I think today was a really great start with what the session and the resources you have to really get started. So thanks, Dawn.
It was quite a lot of fun. So I just want to do one more thing, if it's an ask for you. In your guided notes document at the end of page 3, you have a link to a survey. So we would love to get your feedback from today, just to see how it went, what we can improve on, and how we can better serve you in the future. We also have on every page of our guided notes the customer care phone number as well as email. They will help Krista really support you with a lot of, if there's a password question or a login issue or anything like that, our customer care team is available as well to be able to get you on your way to getting your students reading. So we want to thank you so very much for your time today. And we are so excited to help get your students reading. We can stay on for a little bit if we have any more questions that are being put onto the Google Sheet. But we are about at time. So again, thank you so much. We'll check the Google Sheet for any more questions, and then we will be ready to get your students reading in Patterson. Thanks again and have a great afternoon.